Good morning and welcome to the Advocacy 101 video series. My name is Slade. I am the Vice President for Public Policy and Advocacy for Southern California and also the VP for the Chapter Advocacy Roundtable Western Region. And today we're very lucky to have Leslie Bruce, one of our advocacy members, and one of the faculty members here at UC San Diego. But before we start, Leslie, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the folks listening in here and your rich history of how you kind of got to being an advocacy, both a faculty member, but also a staunch advocacy member.
Okay, sure. Delighted to be an advocacy member for HIMSS, the Health Information Management and Systems Society, SoCal chapter. I teach advocacy actually, and I teach a number of courses in how to advocate effectively. I have classes in Washington, D.C. and in our state capital, Sacramento, where I teach students to do exactly what we're going to give them an overview of today. So I started out after law school as a legislative aide for a state legislator, and learning that really helped me help others do it better. So that experience, I think, has really informed both my teaching and my career, actually.
Wow. So this is an Advocacy 101, so we're going to really go back to the basics and start to define everything. So in your own words, how would you define advocacy?
I define it as efforts to influence policy, legislation, law, regulation, that kind of thing. It's a focused effort to influence governmental activity.
Okay. Well, you have a distinct advantage because of your law background. So for the common Joe out there, or Jane, as Jerry would put it, do you need, what background do you need to be an advocate? Do you need to have law school background? Can you come from any sector?
You can absolutely come from any sector. You know, the funny thing is that we learn nothing about how the laws are made in law school. We learned about the laws that were given to you and, you know, court decisions and things like that. So no, you don't need a law degree at all. It's helpful if you want to work in certain positions on the Hill, on Capitol Hill. But generally speaking, anybody who has a passion for a mission, like the organization HIMSS, can become an advocate and an effective one.
So, okay, I am passionate about children's rights, among other things. So where would I start for any advocacy topic that I want to become part of? Because again, the common listener out there is probably thinking, okay, I do have issues that I'm concerned about, but where do I begin?
You know, I get that a lot. You know, students always say, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. You know, where on earth do I even begin? Right. I think the important thing is, you know, to not start alone or start, you know, like I'm going to be a children's right advocate or I'm going to be a health IT advocate by myself. Research the organizations that are doing good work in the field and see which one aligns with your lifestyle, the kind of commitment you want to make. Look at that organization, how effective they are, really concentrate on what their mission is, because all the advocacy efforts have to support the mission of the organization. You know, you don't see Girl Scouts talking about drunk driving. It's just, that's not part of their mission. That's Mothers Against Drunk Driving, you know. So you want to find an organization, and obviously if you're in health IT, you want to support an organization that is making a difference in health information technology. And, you know, HIMSS having a mission of optimizing patient outcomes through information technology, that may be one. You know, this is a large, effective organization you might want to align with and get in, and then you can join an advocacy committee even with no experience. Okay.
Because I think that's one of the myths that we want to dispel today. People are really scared about joining advocacy. The first thing that comes to mind is, what do I say? How do I begin? I'm not good at public speaking. So you have a very good background between law, between teaching, and you've also worked in the legislative arm. Now, one of the things that people ask me a lot is, Ian, okay, you're doing advocacy. How is this different from lobbying? So when people try to
Well, in my mind, they're not really different. You know, they're not really different. Advocacy in the nonprofit sector tends to take the more of a form of education,
right.
where you tell a legislator you could do this or do this, and here are the ramifications of both sides of those things,
right.
and hopefully lead them to what you hope is the right decision.
Right.
You know, lobbying is directly saying, please support this bill because of this.
Right.
And
right.
so that is lobbying, and but both are really advocacy.
Gotcha. So, okay, lobbyists have gotten a really bad rap over the years, and people hear lobbyists, they associate with being an advocate, and so people try to shy off, and you know, I don't want to be part of that. Now, all right, so we've gotten the basics of what is advocacy, how you can get started. So if you really want to be active in an organization, what materials would you recommend reading, just for their own benefit, as to how to become a better, not just public speaker, but engage the staffer, you know, as you're trying to present your ideas to them? Because a lot of folks, it was my experience too, that anxiety builds up, and you're just scared that you might not be able to get your point across, be it in Capitol Hill or just being in a town hall meeting, or just someone that might have an influence with whatever agenda you might have. So what advice would you give for folks who are not good at public speaking?
You know, I think it's all about knowing what you're talking about, and that gives you confidence. If you're, you know, winging something on a topic you're really not that familiar with, you will have a hard time being influential. Just like salespeople have to know your product. You know, not only, and in advocacy, just as important, and maybe more so than knowing your product or knowing what it is you're trying to influence, is knowing what influences your audience. You've got to know your audience, not just know your product. You got to know your audience really, really well to be effective. So, you know, it's funny. The last time I Googled how to advocate, I think there were something like 16 million hits.
Wow.
Because every organization understands that this is a valuable part of their mission, is to advocate. And so they all have little manuals, little, you know, how-to guides for all of their organizations. I mean, HIMSS has one.
We do.
You know, so that we have one. There are many, many, many out there. And in fact, even if you go to, you know, Senate.gov or House.gov or even your state legislator, there's frequently a guide to citizen participation. And, you know, that gives you a really great foundation for what it is you want to build on so that you can become an advocate.
I didn't even know about that. So, okay, so we have our subject matter down. We know who we're talking to. So one of the struggles that I've had when trying to advocate is when you only have, you know, a certain amount of time to meet with people, and you have, you know, 10 things that you want to talk about, and obviously there's not enough time to present all of it. What is your strategy when you're trying to, you know, narrow down your focus? As you mentioned earlier, if you're a Girl Scout, don't talk about drunk driving. So what are the different strategies that you might use?
Well, I really think, you know, that you only want to talk about one thing. If at all possible, you want to make a one point, one ask, and then support it with key messages that in fact support that ask. And not key messages that, you know, resonate with you, because it's not about you, it's about them. Do these messages resonate with the person you're trying to influence? So I'm really an advocate, there's that word again, for picking one issue at a time.
And I've experienced that too, going up to Capitol Hill and trying to bring 3 different asks, 4 different asks, and you're struggling because you have, you know, only 25 or so minutes, and you're trying to, okay, I'm going to talk about this for 5 minutes, and hopefully she doesn't ask that many questions, and you're trying to get through a script, so to speak, and it's hard. And my question always at the end of each conversation is, did I get the point across?
And you don't ever want to walk out of a meeting asking yourself that.
Right. So I think that the approach of just having one primal topic is better than having all these different ideas that you're trying to cram down in a short period of time. So, in your experience in teaching, what are the common questions that your students have? Because, of course, it's advocacy, they're new to it. What are the things that you get a lot when you're teaching
Well,
this?
you know, interesting, I think people say, why should I do this? You know, why is this important? And I look at them and I try not to blink and have my mouth fall open, but I say, healthcare is the most regulated industry in the world, and certainly is in this country. And if government is involved with shaping the way you do things in your job, for your patients, for your hospital, your clinic, whatever, then it behooves you to know a little bit about how that works. And when things are implemented that you think are contrary to good patient care or to the survival of the organization or your profession, then you really need to step up and be able to talk to government and say, perhaps you weren't aware, or let me educate you about the consequences of doing it this way. So I think it really behooves us all. And so I say it's important because of the amount of regulation and law that is relative to healthcare, but I also think it's exhilarating. It's exhilarating to advocate on behalf of patients in your profession and your organization. It's exhilarating, as I'm sure you've experienced. And that kind of makes it fun. And you know, I tell students also when they ask that democracy is a participatory sport. And it works so much better when people participate. You know, there's this wonderful quote about we get the government we deserve. And so if we don't vote and we get these people who don't know anything about healthcare or voting against your interest, and you're not there talking to them about what they need to know to make the right decision, you know, it just doesn't work as well. So, and then I think finally I would say it's about leadership. And if all of us in this organization, we're obviously in leadership roles, wanting to make a difference, if you're going to be a leader, you really need to have some familiarity and comfort level with advocacy to be effective.
So what would you say to the cynics who say, okay, Ian, you keep going up to Capitol Hill. I don't think you've made any progress. Why should I even bother? So the folks that are, you know, the naysayers, what do you say to folks say, hey, Leslie, you know, sure, your cause is important, but really, what have you changed, or what positive effect have you had on these folks?
I would say a couple of things. First of all, advocacy is sort of a perseverance contest.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. You've got to hang in there. You make little steps. You build relationships, because people don't trust you overnight. You know, we're all human beings, and everything, you know, the world runs on relationships, and no more so than in this sphere. So you build the relationship, you build the trust, you become a resource, and things happen. And second of all, you know, there was a reporter for the LA Times named Tony Perry, and he told my class once, and I've never forgotten this, he said, you know, being cynical about politics is about as useful as being cynical about the weather. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you anywhere. We want to build those relationships, make government more responsive to what we need to do to improve patient care. Wow.
Well, Leslie, I learned a lot. So I'm hoping that folks watching this video will learn a lot about advocacy and hopefully jump in. You know, the water's warm, we need everyone, and you don't have to be a lawyer. I didn't know that.
No, you don't.
All right. Well, Leslie, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.